Hey, Larkin Rose here, and I'm weirdly recording this video in the parking lot of a comedy club in an intermission between me rating a horror story while in the parking lot of a comedy club. That's sort of weird. But there happens to be light here, and I have my stupid laptop, so that's the reason for the kind of crappy quality, but who cares? You don't really need to see me that well. Anyway, so I did a post yesterday, I think, that said that 0 statist Christians abide by the concept of do unto others as you would have done unto you. And there was some fun, interesting back and forth in the comments after that. Some people misinterpreted it as a bash of Christians, which is interesting because it's the exact opposite. It's basically saying what Jesus taught doesn't match being a statist. Like the concept, even if, never mind getting into all the doctrines of this, that just the concept of do unto others as you would have done unto you. If you don't want people violently initiating, extortion and thuggery against you, then you shouldn't be trying to do that against other people. And everybody who votes for government is personally advocating a ruling class that does that to other people. So it's impossible to abide by the whole do unto others thing while being a statist. If you advocate government, you're not living by that. Now, in the comment section, a bunch of people, again, some people thought it was a dig on Christianity. Some people used it as an opportunity to do a dig against Christianity. So I thought I'd do a video about religion and statism because I see a lot of misunderstanding in a lot of different directions. The concept of anarchism versus statism is a very simple concept. Anarchy means rule by no one. And an anarchist is someone who advocates rule by no one, not having a ruling class. No masters, no slaves. Pretty simple. Statist is anybody else, basically. Anybody who advocates the existence of government, a ruling class, political power, political authority. So it's basically a binary choice. You're either an anarchist or you're a statist. Now, to me, that seems to be almost completely independent of what people call their religion. And that's where this gets messy, because if somebody claims to be a Christian and live by the teachings of Jesus Christ, as written in the Bible, now, whether you want to argue about whether that's historically what he said, or whether you want to argue about whether he existed at all, I don't care. The people who believe that that's the word of God and try to live by those teachings, you can't do that and advocate government. They're completely incompatible. Turn the other cheek, even against people who commit aggression against you, which, by the way, I don't believe in, but that's a thing that Jesus said. That's not the same as go vote for somebody to violently dominate all your neighbors, even if they didn't do anything to you. Those are not compatible. Then I see a lot of people saying that, to be a true Christian, you basically have to be an anarchist. And I know a lot of Christian anarchists. Now, I'm not a Christian. Probably should have said that to begin with. I don't identify as Christian. I was raised that way. I know a lot about the Bible and that stuff. I don't identify as a Christian. And whether you go, oh, okay, that's fine, or you're going to burn in hell, whatever. But there's a huge amount of what is, what Jesus taught about how you should treat other people that I'm totally in agreement with. And the thing is, if I'm feeling snarky and troll-like, this is actually a anarchist Christian friend of mine is the first one who basically said this to me, and now I like to occasionally taunt people. If you call yourself a Christian and you advocate statism, you advocate political authoritarian aggression against all your neighbors, which you do if you're a Republican or a Democrat or something in between, or anybody who votes for anything. If you advocate that and call yourself a Christian, I'm a better Christian than you are, and I don't even claim to be a Christian. I live closer to the teachings of Jesus Christ than you do if you call yourself a Christian, but you advocate violent, legalized aggression against everyone you know. So it's pretty sad if I say, yeah, I'm not a member of that religion, but so far I'd be a better member of that religion than most of the people who say they are a member of that religion. Now, a few people thought I was picking on Christianity, which I wasn't. The funny thing is I posted that a couple days before Easter. That wasn't even intentional. I wasn't even thinking of Easter. I saw the phrase, the do unto others thing somewhere. I don't even remember where, and it just made me post that little thing. Maybe they posted it having to do with something with Easter, but I wasn't even intending for that to have anything to do with it. But then a couple people were like, how could you bash Christians, like, right coming up on the celebration of the Son of God being raised up to heaven and that whole thing. And I said, I wasn't bashing Christians. I was bashing people who call themselves Christians and totally aren't. And then a bunch of anarchist Christians said, yeah, you can't really cheer for state violence and pretend that you live by the teachings of Jesus Christ. The thing is, when it comes to religion, and I'm about to get to the other side of people who do bash religion, when it comes to religion, I view it as there's kind of two sides. There's the moral code for how you interact with other people, how you treat other human beings, and then there's the stories, I would call them mythology if I don't think they actually happened. Like if somebody thinks, well, these books literally describe what happened, and I don't think that actually happened, I will call it mythology. They can call it the stories or the facts or whatever. To me, those are two different things. And if you believe a bunch of stuff that I view as mythology, but you're nice to other people, you believe in live and let live and peaceful coexistence and non-aggression, like, I don't care what mythology or facts or other stuff you believe in. I mean, I might have a discussion with you if, we're close enough that it's worth having a discussion about that. But even then, like, what would the point be? I don't particularly feel the need to try to talk somebody out of believing things that don't make them jerks. But here's the problem. Of the people who are atheists, maybe agnostics, but atheists, a lot of them are very critical of religion. And a lot of them will say, you can't be religious at all and be an anarchist. Meanwhile, there are a bunch of Christians I know that say, wait, you can't be a Christian and not be an anarchist. What are you talking about? And I think it's important to make this distinction. And I actually talked about this when I did an interview with a friend of mine about anarchism and Christianity and do they match, which is what somebody says their religion is completely meaningless to me. Because I know people who call themselves Christians, but they use their belief and they use the Bible as an excuse to be a judgmental, obnoxious, arrogant jerk to other people, which is kind of weird given what Jesus actually said, but they do that. And they flaunt their righteousness of, I am a devout Christian. And yeah, but you're an asshole. And there are plenty of Christians I know they use their belief, whether in the Bible, all their beliefs, they use it as the foundation of being very nice and very generous and very kind to other people. And they're not in your face and they're not, I'm better than you and I'm going to heaven. Well, you're going to burn in hell because you don't believe what they don't do that crap. So if the label Christian can be worn by people who are that different in personality and that different in how they treat other people, the label becomes meaningless to me. Now, the people who wave that label around, some of them can say, yeah, but the other people wearing that label, like to wear that label and then be a violent, judgmental jerk and pretend you're following the teachings of Jesus Christ, that's ridiculous. And I would agree. But the point is, to me, if somebody says, I'm a Christian, that doesn't mean anything to me. It's absolutely meaningless because of the range of personalities and types of people and how they behave who wear that label. Now, At the same time, there are atheists who have had really nasty experiences with the religious jerks, the judgmental, obnoxious twits who hold on to their beliefs as a reason to feel superior. And this isn't just Christianity, by the way. I've seen the exact same thing when it comes to Judaism and Islam. And like, you can do this with anything. You can say, this is what I believe in, and that makes me better, and you suck, and I'm going to heaven, and you're going to burn in hell. Well, then you're a jerk. And by the way, don't blame your religion for the fact that you're a jerk. You chose to be a jerk, as evidenced by the fact that there's lots of other people who say they're members of that religion who aren't jerks. And that's actually a problem I see, because I see a bunch of atheists who point at obnoxious, control freak, judgmental jerks, whether Christian or members of Islam or Judaism or whatever, being control freak jerks. And it's easy for the atheist to associate that with, I guess that's what religious people are like. And it is what some religious people are like. But they can then jump to the conclusion that if you're religious, you're probably a judgmental jackass. That doesn't follow. That doesn't have to be true. A very interesting thing that I've noticed, I started years ago when I would talk to religious people I knew who were voluntarists, and I would ask them, if you had to choose one of the two following options and tell me which one more closely describes your God, here are the options. One, he issues commandments to you, and if you disobey them, you're bad and he will punish you. That's one sort of general flavor of God. The other flavor of God is, it is an all-loving power that created you, and he tells you to do stuff not because he just arbitrarily made up rules, but because those are the rules, quote unquote, to live by if you want to be a fulfilled, happy human being. So the commandments aren't commandments. They're, if you want to be happy, here's how you need to behave. And the result of not doing that isn't that God's going to come kick you or strike you with lightning. It's that you're not going to be a happy human being, because that's just how it works. And so if I ask people which of these more closely describes your God, I have seen in recent years a big movement away from the authoritarian, well, he gives commands and kicks you if you disobey, to it's actually a loving, creative force that just tells you, it's a guide more than a disciplinarian. And I mean, you guys can argue about which you think it is and for the reasons for that. I'm just pointing out that that means within the concepts of not just Christianity, but being religious at all, I see a big drift in the direction of voluntarism, even among people who still have the same spiritual or religious beliefs. They just view it a little differently, that, okay, that's not just God bossing me around, just making up random rules and then smacking me if I disobey. It really is a guide, a loving guide who wants me to be happy and fulfilled and stuff. And so there's a huge range inside Christianity or people who follow Islam or Judaism or, whatever else, Hinduism. When you get to Hinduism, it's and like Taoism and stuff, well, it's the same thing of Christianity. It's really hard to reconcile those with being a statist, and some of it stops being spiritual. Anyway, the point of this video had nothing to do with my own spiritual or religious beliefs. I don't consider myself religious at all. If somebody says, are you spiritual? I have to say, it depends a lot on what you mean by that. Because I'm not what a lot of people call themselves spiritual. I'm not what they are, and I don't believe what they believe. And the thing is, you may have noticed I don't talk about that in public because I don't care. Like, to me, what I do in public is about addressing the particular belief that I think actually matters right now. If we had 1 billion different people with 1 billion different sets of religious beliefs, and they believe different stories / mythology, whatever you want to call it, but they all grasp the non-aggression principle, we're fine. Like, we can sit around having, fun discussions about stuff, but we're going to peacefully coexist, and I'm okay with that. So I don't particularly care what particular stories people think are literal or aren't, if they're willing to abide by the concepts of self-ownership and non-aggression and stuff. And the thing is, that whole range of being religious or spiritual, or Christian or anything else, those labels don't at all define whether somebody actually believes in freedom and is actually a moral person or is even just a nice person. So when people say, well, I'm better because I'm a Christian, it's like, well, what do you mean by Christian? Because I know very, very different things that different people describe as being a Christian. Some of them are obnoxious, selfish jerks. Some of them are like nice and caring. And I know a bunch of each. And so it sort of bothers me in both directions when atheists say, oh, all religious people are blah, blah, blah. Like, no, they're not. Some of them are. Some of them are judgmental jerks. But to be religious doesn't mean you have to be authoritarian. It doesn't mean you have to be a judgmental jerk. At the same time, when people say, well, I have faith in Christ, which makes me a better person than you. No, you might be an obnoxious jerk and say you believe in Jesus Christ. And like, what do I care that you believe in a particular thing if the way you treat other people is as an obnoxious jerk? And the ultimate punchline of this is people across the spectrum of religious beliefs. The vast majority of them are statists, which means they advocate violent aggression against their neighbors. And I've not so gently pointed this out and talked about this. There's a video called Message to the Voting Cattle. I'll actually put the link to the particular part of that video that I'm talking about. And in that video, it's actually from my novel, The Iron Web. In that video, I point out that the vast majority of people, their religion is statism. They may say they're Christians or Jews or Muslims or whatever, but they worship government. They worship political authority. That's who they actually believe. That's who they actually defer to. And the building they go to on Sunday or whatever is meaningless window dressing compared to A, how they actually treat other people, and B, what they advocate be done to other human beings. And that's that whole spectrum. Like, to me, the spectrum between voluntarism and statism, as in actual tolerance and violent coercion, like actual peaceful coexistence and authoritarian domination. That spectrum is the one I care about. All the way along that spectrum, there are people who say they're Muslims or they're Jews or they're Christian. I don't give a crap. Those labels are meaningless to me. If you're cheering for violent aggression, what you say is your religion doesn't matter in the slightest to me. Now, if you say this is my religion and then you're a voluntarist, cool. And I'm not going to bother arguing about your religion, even if I disagree with the factual story sides. Because if you're capable of peaceful coexistence, cool, we're great, not a problem. Like, you can believe whatever the hell you want. And it's frustrating to see people divided by means of something that is, I'm going to offend people by saying it. Okay, let me elaborate. By means of something that is meaningless. Yes, I'm saying the religious label that people wear is absolutely meaningless. Now, some Christians and other people are going to get offended because they're going to say, when I identify as a Christian, that's not meaningless. That's fundamental to my belief and how I treat other people. Okay, I'm not saying it's meaningless to you. I'm saying it's meaningless to me because I've heard the whole spectrum of people, from selfish, obnoxious, control freak jerks to the kindest, most generous, nice people. I've heard all of them call themselves Christians. And I've heard that whole spectrum call themselves, say they're believers of Islam and Jewish people and, all these different sects that are supposedly religious. They go across the whole spectrum, which means that label doesn't mean anything to me. It doesn't say anything about whether you're actually a decent human being. And if people want to make the argument that you can't really be a Christian without being an anarchist, I think that's true. If by a Christian you mean somebody who lives by what Jesus said about how you should treat other people, that's very much self-ownership, voluntarism, don't commit violent aggression, like, duh, obviously. But I'm not particularly interested in arguing over what real Christians would do. Like, Christians can argue among themselves, or people who call themselves Christians can argue among themselves about that. And the same thing is, I've seen pro-freedom Muslims saying, all that authoritarian crap, that isn't really what it teaches. And I'm, by no means an expert on that. So I'm in no position to say, well, yeah, what the Quran or the this or the, whatever book you're looking at, what it really teaches is, like, I don't stinking know. What I know is the only moral choice is peaceful coexistence, not initiating violence against your neighbor. So and here's all right, I'll end with this, which will probably insult some people too. Oh, well, this is the season to insult people. I think, okay, I'm just going to insult people. I think a lot of people are better, more moral human beings than their religions tell them to be. And what I mean by that is you can look in the Bible or the Quran or the Jewish version of, all the different books from all the different religions. You can find things in there that are pretty damn nasty, that are justifying slavery, that are justifying, like, beating your wife or, kill the wife because the husband died, and a bunch of messed up stuff, and how they treat disbelievers. Well, like, if you want to be creeped out, like, Leviticus has a lot of stuff in it in the Bible that's really creepy. It's basically, well, if your brother or somebody is saying, hey, maybe you should believe in this God over here, go stone him to death. And by the way, you be first to stone him to death because you're the brother. Go murder him because he's suggesting believing in something else. That's in there. Now, I know some Christians say, yeah, but that's what the Old Testament was saying to the Israelites back, whatever. Okay, I'm not even going to argue about the doctrine because I don't care and I don't pretend to be one of them. The point is, you can look at those books and use them as an excuse to be a jerk, or you can look at those books and use them as justification for being a decent human being. And the thing is, to me, that is a gauge of your own internal conscience. What are you choosing to be? Are you choosing to be a jerk who's looking for justification in your religious book? Or are you choosing to be a kind, tolerant person who sees reflected in your religious book the thing that says you're supposed to do that? And that's why, to me, it comes down to the human being, the individual, and what he chooses to do and how he chooses to treat other human beings. And the thing is, to me, the question of anarchist versus statist is a way more significant distinction than all those religious labels. Because anarchist means, even if you don't believe in a God, it means I'm willing to allow other people to live in peace without violently interfering with their lives. And statist means I'm not. So whatever you call your religion, if you advocate that other people be violently controlled, you're not one of my people. And when I talk about my people, has nothing to do with race, has nothing to do with reality or nationality, has nothing to do with what people call their religion. Now, you could say it does have to do with their real religion, like what they really live by, whether they really live by the concepts of peaceful coexistence. And you can argue that, well, that's what Jesus actually taught. Okay, that's, I'm not going to bother with that argument myself, even though I think you're right. But the measure of whether somebody is going to be a decent person and not cheer for violent aggression against his neighbors, the scale between statist and anarchist, well, it's not a scale, it's just a binary choice. Either you want rule by someone or you want rule by no one. That matters a billion times more than the label they stick on themselves regarding their religious beliefs. So it's kind of sad and funny that in a lot of, like, almost all these religions have one version or another of do unto others as you would have done unto you. Actually, the slightly better version is don't do unto others as you wouldn't want them have done unto you, which is, phrasing it in the negative. If you don't want them to punch you in the face, don't punch them in the face. If you don't want them to cheer for an authoritarian monster to force you to fund things you're against, maybe don't vote for an authoritarian monster to force them to fund things they're against. But that's why, to me, that the whole watching people fight against each other because of religion, and, the thing of Christians getting mad at Jews, some Christians getting mad at Jews, and then Jews saying, no, if you're critical of any Jews, you're anti-Semitic. Well, what if I'm critical of the ones that are power-happy psychos, not because they're Jews, but because they're statists, which is exactly the same as I do for Christians. If you're a power-happy psycho who cheers for the violent domination of his fellow man, I don't care whether you call yourself Christian or Jewish or atheist. Like, I care that you're advocating something evil. And, okay, I said I was going to end. Now I'm actually going to end on this point. The saddest to me is the people who claim to be atheists and are statists, because they're not atheists. Government absolutely fulfills every aspect of an authoritarian God. It's superhuman. It has superhuman rights. Disobedience to its commands, its laws, is a sin. It's a crime to disobey that. It's not just people. Because if people tell you to do something and you disobey, well, maybe that's good, maybe it's bad. It depends on what they told you to do. But when government issues a law, that isn't just human beings. That is the law. That is political authority. We must bow to that. So the people who identify as atheists and believe in government are the most deluded, because they don't realize you completely believe in a God, and it is the least sane, most destructive God in history. Because at least it's difficult to disprove, like, the other people's gods that they say, well, you can't just see him, he isn't just walking down the street. But I can really easily disprove the God of government. The whole mythology behind it, you're not even pretending that it, came down from on high. It's just, well, we wrote some stuff on parchment and poof, now we're superhuman and we have the right to rule you. So the atheists are the most dangerous religious zealots there are, which is kind of ironic. So even the label of atheism means nothing to me when it comes to, are you a good person who respects other human beings or not? Because I know lots of atheists who are voluntarists, and I know atheists who are, most atheists, just like most other people, are total statists, and they advocate violent domination of their fellow man. So, yeah, I guess the punchline here is, I don't care what religion you say you are, and I'm not going to say, that's awesome, or that's horrible. Whatever religious label you stick on you, I'm going to ask, do you actually condone freedom for the rest of humanity, even the ones who don't believe as you do? Because if you don't, you're kind of what's wrong with the world. And if you do, I don't really care what other stuff you believe. I'm on your side if you're on the side of peaceful coexistence. And I know a lot of atheists who are, a lot of people who call themselves Christians, people who call themselves Jews. That's awesome. And those who I consider my people, and the buildings they go to on Sunday and the religious labels they wear, I just kind of don't care. What I care is, how do you actually behave? How do you actually treat other human beings? And weirdly, that seems to be almost completely independent to what religion people say they believe in, and 100% dependent on whether they're statists or not. So I probably just offended a whole bunch of people. Too bad.